Hi everybody and welcome to the Toon Review. On today's show, Eddie Howe has spoken to the media ahead of this massive game against Liverpool tomorrow night. I can't stress how big the game is. Of course, trying to get our Premier League season back on track again after a few stalemate draws. And of course, the cup final coming up next week. We want to get the confidence back in the side, scoring a few goals and hopefully putting more and more pressure onto Liverpool Football Club, who, let's face it, have had a dreadful season. We'll come on to Eddie's press conference in a second. There is a player permanently now has left Newcastle United, and Gareth Southgate was at the training ground yesterday, and Eddie Howe has explained what he was doing there. So let's get into it. It's the Toon Review Daily News. Hi everybody, I'm Paul and welcome back to the channel. First of all, if you're new here and like what you see, please do subscribe to the channel. It is free to do so. Come and be part of this wonderful community on the Toon Review. And don't forget to hit that notification bell, which will let you know when we go live, we upload, or we indeed schedule a show in. But anyway, on to the press conference. And Eddie Howe, first of all, spoke regarding Joe Willock. Now, Joe Willock went off last week with what looked like a very, very nasty hamstring injury. It was heavily strapped up on the sidelines. He came back on, tried to play, but only lasted a couple of minutes and said, that's enough, I've got to come off. Now, reports have come in this week that it is quite a serious injury and that he'll be out until March. That's not what Eddie Howe has said this morning. Eddie Howe said, we haven't seen him yet and think he'll be doubtful for tomorrow's game. I don't think it's a big injury at all. A very minor complaint with his hamstring. So we hope to get him back very quickly. Now, this is a strange one for me because he looked in a lot of pain. That the hamstring, like I said earlier, was heavily strapped up. So if Joe Willock does suddenly make a remarkable recovery, I'll be amazed, quite honestly. Now, the fact that Eddie Howe says we haven't seen him yet, which means he hasn't been in training, would indicate to me that he's not going to play in the game. Because if he hasn't been training, then he's not fit, quite clearly not fit to start the game, which would surprise me if he was. But then again, how many times does Eddie throws curveballs in these press conferences and never actually tell us what is really happening? But, you know, from reports and the way that leg was heavily strapped, if that's just a minor niggle, I'll be amazed because a niggle doesn't get heavily strapped like that. But obviously, any sort of twinge with a hamstring is a worry. There's no doubt about that. But for me, I think, you know, realistically, I think, you know, Willock will be missing tomorrow night, definitely, and I'll be amazed if he's fit for the cup final, which is a shame, because whatever you think of Joe Willock, you know, he does flatter to deceive at times, definitely. He looks like he can't be bothered most of the time, but that's just his persona. Chris Waddle had that. But when he gets the ball and he runs with the ball, the guy's a talent, there's no doubt about it, and he's still a young kid. We have to remember that. Sometimes we put a lot of pressure on these players, not realising just how old they are. Yes, it's a blow to Joe Willock, but I'm sure he'll bounce back, and we'll just have to wait and see when he does get fit again. Now, as you can see there on the banner, ASM and Miggy are fit to play. Eddie said they've been back in training this week and they're fine. So no problems at all with Miggy and ASM. And I'm glad, but I think, you know, we've all said in the shows, you know, we can see Miggy needing a rest, just take a break from things and things like that, just because he's put in such a monumental effort this season, and he looks very tired. Would you give him a rest before the cup final? I know we haven't got a lot of players to come in, but a 4-2-3-1 maybe would give an opportunity for Miggy just to have a rest. What would you do with Miggy tomorrow? Would you rest him? And the same with Maxi. What would you do with him? Do you think he's going to be a pivotal player for the cup final? Or would you rather have Anthony Gordon in on the left? Or maybe Isak with Wilson up front for the final? There's a lot of options, of course, because Bruno's coming back as well. So we'll be in a lot better state, providing we avoid injuries tomorrow against Liverpool. We're going to be in a fine bit of fettle for the game against Manchester United next week at Wembley. But let me know, because I'm interested in what you think the formation should be and whether you think ASM should start. Now, on Callum Wilson, a very strange one again, because if you can remember back to last week, Eddie said that it's a minor niggle. He felt his hamstring in training. Callum Wilson came out and said that as well during the week in an interview, said that it was just a minor injury. However, Eddie has said Callum's done really well. It was a very minor complaint for him. He hasn't trained yet, and we hope he trains today and that he's in contention. Now, that's a little bit strange for me because, again, he hasn't trained all week, and that's got to be a concern. If this was just a minor little niggle, then the fact that he hasn't trained all week would suggest possibly otherwise. And Eddie's obviously hoping that he trains today and he'll be in contention. So for me, I don't think Callum Wilson's fit for tomorrow. I don't think he's fit enough to start, for sure. I think Isak will start the game again. I'd be amazed if Eddie throws him straight in when he's only had, if he does train today, 1 day's training on the back of a niggle with his hamstring. I'll be utterly amazed if he starts the game. So for me, that gives us indications that Alexander Isak is going to start the game. Now, onto the home form, and Eddie Howe said about St James's Park, he said it's been pivotal. We've enjoyed playing at home. I think lately we've been a bit frustrated as we've wanted more goals and clear-cut chances. Teams have defended well against us with a clear plan, and it's up to us to find solutions. Now, of course, we know how difficult it's been for Newcastle United in the last few games. It's been very frustrating when we've had opportunities to score goals and it hasn't happened. And that has been a big frustration for fans and for players alike. Let's not forget that the players will be frustrated that they're not being able to put the ball in the back of the net as much as they want to. Defensively, we've been sound. At Bournemouth, we looked very rocky, to be honest, but that wasn't defending. That was passing. The defending was still there. The clearances, headed clearances, tackles and everything like that, for me, were fine. So I think it's a big issue is going the other way. But it's up to these players now to turn it around. Eddie will work with them in training all week. There's no doubt about that. But it's up to the players to turn this around and really go for it tomorrow. Liverpool's defence has not been great all season. We know that. They've conceded way more goals than they should have. So it's up to us to bring the game to Liverpool tomorrow. We can't sit back because that's where Liverpool play better, when they sit back and they come at you. They can play around you in the blink of an eye, and they've got some very talented players coming back tomorrow for the game. So we just have to, go for it ourselves. Play our normal game. No matter who's in the team, they've been training with each other all week. Let's just make sure we bring the game to Liverpool. Now, finally, he spoke about Sir Bobby Robson, who, of course, would have turned 90 years old tomorrow, bless him. The legend that is Sir Bobby, the beautiful man that was Sir Bobby, and a man who bled black and white, loved Newcastle United Football Club. And, for me, it would have done something really special, for Bobby tomorrow, because obviously, it's massive. Bobby Robson is a massive figure at St James's Park, and I hope they do something. He says, I consider myself unfortunate not to have met him, but I've heard lots of stories about him from people connected to the club. He did incredible things for this football club, and he did. There's no doubt about that. The man will always be a legend. It was Kevin Keegan's birthday, of course, earlier in the week. It would have been lovely for Newcastle to have invited maybe Kevin to the game, to come out onto the pitch. Two clubs he's held in very high regard with, of course, Newcastle and Liverpool. And of course, a massive tribute to Sir Bobby, I think, will happen tomorrow. There'll be something going on about Bobby, whether it's with War Flags or whoever. There'll be something special, I'm sure. So very special birthdays this week for Newcastle United Football Club. It's a shame Eddie Howe didn't meet Bobby Robson, because I'm sure those two would have had some fantastic conversations. Bobby giving a little bit of advice to Eddie Howe and, things like that. But it's a shame they never met. But I'm sure Bobby's looking down on Eddie Howe now, very, very proud of what he's done so far for this football club, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, little bits of news for you. First of all, Chris Wood. Chris Wood has made his move to Nottingham Forest permanent. He will be staying at the City Ground from now on. He is no longer on loan. It's a permanent deal. I'm not sure how that's happened with the transfer window being shut, but it must be some kind of something in the contract for the loan deal that has made this happen. That's all I can think of. But he's now a full-time Nottingham Forest player. So we wish Chris Wood the best of luck. Didn't quite happen at Newcastle United for him, but we wish him well for the rest of his career. Now, finally, Gareth Southgate was at the training ground yesterday, and everybody was wondering what the hell was going on. But of course, it was for a particular reason. There was an event on yesterday at a charity dinner, which was hosted by Graham Jones it's to raise money for St Oswald's Hospice. And he also, basically, Gareth Southgate spoke at the event, which I thought was a fantastic gesture from the England manager to raise some money for St Oswald's Hospice. I think that's a fantastic thing to do. So that's why he was there. But obviously earlier on, he went and saw Eddie. Eddie gets on very, very well with Gareth Southgate, and was pleased to see him there. Eddie said, I've got a really good relationship with Gareth. I really respect him. He spoke at a dinner last night that Graham Jones hosted for a local hospice. It was an incredible night, and hopefully a lot of money was raised. Obviously, the team were there suited and booted. There's a lovely photo of the team around a table, and Bruno's dad sitting with them as part of the team. It's just a fabulous, fabulous connection this squad of players has. It's really good. And Bruno's dad sitting, I'm looking at the photo now, Bruno's dad sitting, of course, next to his son, and then the rest of the Newcastle squad, which was pretty amazing. So that's why Gareth Southgate was at the training ground yesterday. But obviously great that he's been able to have a little bit of time with Eddie Howe, and hopefully Eddie will have been pushing for Nick Pope to have the number one spot, as he totally deserves. But there you go, guys. That is the daily news for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. And of course, if you're new, like I said earlier, please come and be part of the community. Hit the subscribe button, free to do so. Very nearly at 17,400. And with your help, we'll get there sooner rather than later. And hit that bell as well, which will let you know when we upload, we go live, or we schedule in a show. If you're watching this on Friday afternoon, don't forget, 8 p.m. tonight, TTR Friday. Start your weekend off with a great bit of football chat, a good laugh, and of course the big fat football quiz where you can come and join us and win some prizes. So lots going on this weekend, of course, the watch along, the review of the game, and then we start the build up to the cup final at Wembley. So get yourself subscribed, lots to come, guys, but enjoy the rest of your Friday. Take care.